That's what she gets. The grass was not greener on the other side. It never is. It never is. Listen, man. When they
On
want
story for your YouTube. Hey, I've been watching your videos for months now and had been thinking whether to send you my story so that you could share it with your audience. Based on the some videos I had seen, I figured that my story wouldn't be worth sharing when compared to the horrible experiences that are some of these other stories you have on your channel and that your viewers may not see mine as that big of a deal. Regardless, I decided to share, and if my story gets shared, I do look forward to reading some of the comments, whether good or bad. Something which I strongly emphasize is that my story does have a lot of backstory, or maybe even side stories that all play into how things turned out for me. I will try and condense things as much as I can so that the video, if made, is not too long. My relationship with the girl I had been dating shortly after high school came to a sudden end, and I couldn't understand why. It didn't make any sense, and for me, that is something I couldn't accept. I spoke to mutual friends as well as the parents of my ex to see if I could understand why things ended so suddenly, despite the fact that looking back, our relationship was a really good one. I went above and beyond to try and be the best I could be for her and the relationship in order to secure our future together. Some of the answers I got were that not even my ex knew why she ended it, but claimed that it felt right and wanted out and something new. And that's what she did. Not a week after she was with another man, 10 years older, who didn't care for her like I did. I know this because of all the complaining she did on Twitter from how the new guy didn't seem to appreciate her and the dissolution of their relationship after just 3 short months. Looking back, it clearly appears as though she might have cheated, and she probably did. But that wasn't what I became concerned about since I couldn't really prove it back then anyway. Instead, I focused on why things ended, and she quickly jumped into a new relationship as if the grass was greener on the other side, which, as I explained, it wasn't. This is where my story really starts. Had a college professor accidentally have me look into the abuse men face for an essay topic, and this led me down a rabbit hole regarding women's abuse towards men. I began looking into why women behave this way on YouTube and stumbled on red pill ideology, hypergamy, Briffault's law, etc. During this time, it was nothing like the stuff we see today in the manosphere community. Because of what I learned, I began to feel disgust and resentment towards the relationship between men and women, since I no longer saw anything innocent or magical in them as portrayed in the mainstream. Relationships seemed too transactional for me to ever want to partake in. I stopped attempting to find a lifelong partner and instead kept to myself since I stopped believing a woman could love me for me and instead for what I could provide for her. The idea of marriage and romantic relationships was something I saw now as not being something which was in the cards for me anymore. During this time away from relationships, I made my way through college and delved deep into my hobby. So much so that I began to create content on YouTube as I had seen others do, the same with some success. A perk I liked about this hobby was that it is a male dominated hobby, with very, very few women taking any interest in it due to its nature. I figured this would keep me insulated from ever developing any serious relationship with women. Side note, Inés says, my reasoning may seem silly, but I am fairly sure I am not the only one who has this issue. Most, if not all, of my sexual or romantic partners are women who became interested in me prior to me ever being interested in them. From there, I have chosen and rejected those whom I chose to proceed in engaging with in the way they desire, whether romantically or sexually. I never intentionally did anything to try to gain interest from women, but from the attention I got from them, I came to the conclusion that something about me attracted them. I don't know if this is the experience for all men, to just go out there and have women naturally become interested in you without putting effort in out of one's own initial interest in these women. But I'm going to assume that it is not the case, but I might be wrong. This is just my experience. I don't write this to claim I am God's gift to women or anything like that. It's just something I noticed and later helped me mitigate the suffering I experienced with the women I decided to take on seriously. This attention from women, along with all the other positive things that come with it, was something I really enjoyed when I was unaware of female nature as well as the transactional nature of relationships. Unfortunately, once the illusion was broken, I decided to isolate myself from women in order for them to not catch any interest in me, whether sexual or romantic. This way, I would remove any chance of getting involved with someone who may at the moment seem great, but turn out to be something else down the line after they've got me hooked and committed. After some time creating content on YouTube and Instagram, I began to garner a bit of a following, and other big creators within the hobby began to take notice and even wish to collaborate with me. Keep in mind the amount of big content creators within this niche hobby can probably be counted using only the fingers on both your hands at this point in time. So my following compared to theirs was really not much at all, but it was enough for me to get recognized and even asked for my picture at hobby-related events by some of the viewers of my content. Through this micro fame I had garnered, I became friends with some of my local fans, and through them I met other people who also became my friends. This is where I met my now X-2, I guess you could say, which is the focus of my story. As I said, women were not typically fond of this niche hobby, but she was one of the few that seemed to have taken interest in it, and this is what led us to be together eventually. When I originally met her, I had absolutely no intention of ever getting into a relationship, and at this point I was going 4.5 years without having been in a relationship. Being that it had been this long, making sure I stayed single wasn't something I was really concerned about, and things were sort of on autopilot. Having isolated myself from women for such a long time, I had forgotten what it was like for women to show interest in me. I was mostly focused on my hobby and applying to schools for a master's degree since I had recently finished my bachelor's. It never really crossed my mind that something like us coming together could ever happen. Despite this, I really enjoyed chatting with the new group of friends I had found, which included her. We'd all get together to partake in our hobby, and during this time, me and my now ex became closer. And I'd even say closer that I was with some of the others in the group. After some time, I talked to her about my understanding of red pill ideology and why I had been single, as well as why I was very apprehensive towards women and relationships. She seemed to agree with many of the things I said and claimed to understand why I had decided to not be in a relationship after all this time. We talked about our exes, and she let me know how much her getting cheated on by the only serious boyfriend she had had at the time had damaged her and also made her take a break from relationships. I suppose these conversations really allowed me to take a liking to her since, based on everything else I had learned about her, she seemed like a good person. I felt like she understood me. We eventually planned for me to make the 4-hour drive over to see her and spend some time as friends, as well as spend some time with our mutual friends partaking in our shared hobby. The difference between this time and others was that I would normally drive up, then drive down after the day was over. This time I was going to rent a hotel to stay for a prolonged period of time. At this point, I had no intentions of doing anything with her outside of what platonic friends do. Apparently, she had other plans, and that's what ended up happening. We were laying on the hotel room bed deciding what we were going to do when she said something like, "I'm okay with doing anything," which sounded weird to me, so I just asked to see if she wanted to have sex jokingly, to which she replied yes, with a smile, as if I had finally understood what she had been longing for since we saw each other. My weekend long trip ended with us getting it in many times and basically acting like a couple in front of our friend group. I don't know whether it was the buildup from our many months of us conversing, or the many times we bonded over our hobby, or the fact that physically she was my type, or perhaps all of it wrapped into one. But I knew I wanted to make her mine for one reason or another. After some time, I talked to her about how close we had gotten and how we basically acted like a couple. I asked her what she thought about making things official, and she couldn't believe it. She never thought she had a chance and thought that things would end after my interest in sexing her died down. Despite wanting to be with her, I was still very apprehensive. I vetted her by asking things like what her goals were in a relationship were and sharing mine, as well as how I expected to handle relationships issues through communication. She seemed to be really interested in solely being with me and hopefully having a future with me by her side. She went as far as calling me perfect early on in the relationship for how things had turned out. I made sure to let her know that I was not perfect and that we would have problems arise, like any other relationship, but that I was willing to get through them with her as long as she was also in it to get through them too. She seemed to like this response as well and backed what I said. Her parents eventually became aware that we were getting close and warned her that someone at my age is only looking for sex and would only use her. Apparently, her father at my age was getting around with the ladies fairly well. I think they might have been scared that I would just use her or cheat on her like her previous partner. Despite her parents' concerns, I passed every test they might have had with flying colors, and they took a liking for me. I spent quite a lot of time with them, and they began to trust that I had good intentions with their daughter and wouldn't hurt her. Eventually, it felt, at least to me, based on the way I was treated and all the time I spent with them and their extended family, that I was, in fact, also part of their family. It was a warm feeling of acceptance unlike any other. After a significant amount of time, our relationship took what probably was its first negative turn, and I didn't realize it until it was much too late. For her birthday, we attended an event related to our hobby, and someone who was considered a famous content creator within our hobbies community also attended. Many within our friend group were starstruck by this guy, including my GF. I already knew who he was from years prior because the guy had subscribed to me from a shout out another YouTuber bigger than both of us had given each of us some years in the past. In fact, back then, this guy had a smaller following than I did. But by the time we attended this event, he now was among the handful who were truly famous, all because of the luck of the algorithm. Since we arrived at the site the day prior to the main event, everyone had the chance to explore the place and take photos. We stumbled into the YouTuber guy along with his crew and saw they had just finished taking photos for Instagram. As we walked behind them, my GF decided to pretend to call out to me by my YouTube channel name in hopes that it would catch their attention since she was aware the YouTuber dude knew who I was. In fact, he was still subscribed to me from that shout out we had both received when we were smaller channels. I pulled her aside and reminded her not call attention to me while I am not actively making content. This was something she knew, but it was a weird moment. It was like she was so into this guy, she didn't even know only because he was famous that she was willing to use me to get his attention. Anyways, we did the event, and from what I heard when I went to record content on my own and left her with the group we had come with, they ran into the famous YouTuber guy and she even offered him water. No one thought this was weird, including those within the group we had gone to the event with. As we were leaving the event, my GF went over while I and others packed and gave him her Snapchat, or he gave his to her. I wasn't there for it, so I don't know. It seems that he took it as her wanting to have sex because a couple days later, he asked her if she wanted to get flown out by him, only for her to say she had a boyfriend, something that she had already told him once during the downtime of the event. How do I know? Because she got one of her items signed by the guy, again, not weird. I had signed people's stuff myself, and introduced me as her boyfriend. When we were at her place, she told me that if she didn't see a future with me, she would have taken the opportunity in a heartbeat. And my dumbass took what she said at face value and didn't question it much. I had such a false sense of security in our relationship because I thought I knew who she was, but boy was I wrong. After the first year, the honeymoon period seemed to have gone away, and she no longer saw me as the unattainable guy she once thought I was. I mean, she was getting attention from many guys online. Due to her following, I had helped her build, and as I mentioned, even attention from that famous YouTuber dude. She began to become more disrespectful, and I started becoming more distant, though at the time I did not notice this, and only now do I see this in hindsight. It's not as if our relationship took a turn for the worse or anything. Things just weren't as intense as they were in the beginning, and we kind of settled into a new level of comfort where not much effort was being put in on both sides. I didn't seem to mind, as I was busy with other things and thought that it was the same on her end. But I now see she wasn't satisfied with our relationship for one reason or another and wanted to explore outside of it. One day she asked me if I would want to open the relationship. Now I didn't know that this is what women did these days when they were planning on cheating or already had started cheating and didn't want the guilt that came along with it. I took this as though I was not enough and asked her if this was the case, to which she replied, no, but that our relationship was getting serious and that she didn't want to miss out on experiencing things with women as she was bisexual. Now I trusted her at the time that this was her motive, but as I found out later, this was just a lie. The people from our friend group started to become closer to the famous YouTuber dude and would try and spend as much time as they could when he went to hobby-related events we attended. They also started becoming disrespectful to me, as they no longer saw me as they did prior, and now this YouTube famous guy was now their favorite new toy. I don't know what happened to the group, but things started to become very toxic. The original Discord we had created for the original members of our group to come together and chat was open to the public, and many new people show up. I'm not sure if this is why things started to drift apart between the original members or it was something else, but we were no longer as close as we once were, and it showed. Towards the end of 2020, two different event hosting companies had some beef between them, as one of them was stepping into territory which was known to be held by the other. For us event goers, this was great as we had one more local event to attend to, but for the original event hosting company, this meant they could lose out on serious business to the other. Company B had such strong dislike for the actions of Company A that they offered extra compensation for anyone who would refund the ticket to the event held by Company A and show them proof. To make this easier to read, let's call the new company stepping into this territory Company A, and the old company, who was known to be the only to host events at this location, Company B. I purchased tickets to the event held by Company A for both me and my GF, since in my mind it would be great for her to get to see and experience the area once prior to the event of Company B. I wasn't aware that Company A was going to fly out the famous YouTube guy to be there and promote him being there so that more people would show up to get a chance to see him at this event. Since we were locals to this area, our group obviously attended, and we're all over the YouTube dude again, including my GF. I didn't see all the hype over this guy since I did all the same things he did, just on a smaller scale, and had gotten recognition and approval from other creators bigger in following than him, so I just saw him as someone else who did what I did. I did not get very close with the guy and wouldn't spend time with the guy when others in the group did. This is where I think I might have F up, since my GF at the time did spend time with him along with our friends. And on the way home the day of the event held by Company A, she could not stop talking about him. The way I saw this in my mind was as though she was starstruck, as many are when they meet him, since he is sort of a celebrity within our hobby. The reason why I think I might have fucked up was because this might have had something to do with her actions down the line. At the same time I am writing this, I realized to myself that if her intentions were to go through with what she did, it probably wouldn't have mattered if I had been there or not, or perhaps I could have prevented it from happening when it did. Either way, my thoughts are that things went the way they did with her because I chose to attend this event instead of not going and just sticking to the event from Company B. A couple of weeks later was the event held by Company B. Now Company B had issues with the famous YouTuber guy, and I don't remember why that was the case, but during a live stream Company B had, they said he was not allowed to attend. The YouTuber guy ended up showing anyway, I guess because he had the proper connections with the right people who were attending the event. The person who helped him attend the event, despite the event organizers stating that he would not be allowed, was heading out to the event location 2 days prior to the main event. This was a Thursday, so this is when the famous YouTuber guy was there. Now, a very important part of this story is that Company B allows for a special event to be held the night prior to the main event, and only those who purchase a separate ticket can attend this special event hosted by a separate group of people. Not only this, but if you purchase another ticket separate from the previous two I mentioned, you could also participate in a side event during the main event, only 15 minutes long, hosted by this same group of people alongside another company. Now, my GF at the time was part of this group of people, along with others from our friend group, who would help put on these separate events for those who purchased the tickets. Some of those guys were already there by Thursday, helping Company B set up for the event. That Thursday, prior to the special event the next day, I remember my GF visiting my apartment to pick up some stuff she needed for the event that weekend, and told me that she and I would not be driving together to the event like we had to these kinds of events in the past. Her reasoning was that she had to be there early the next day since she was helping set up this special event with the rest of the people who were in charge of running it. When she left my apartment, her Instagram story had a post she made not long after leaving my apartment in which she said she was ready for the next day, Friday, to help with the special event being held that night. Not long after, she made another post on her story in which she said that plans had changed and that she was heading towards the event site that night instead of tomorrow. I specifically remember her ending that story with a guesty. The next day, Friday, I went over to the event site with a mutual friend who was staying over my apartment, and when I arrived, I received a weird text from my GF saying something like, "Why are you here?" I later saw her in person and explained it was to do the check-in for the event and to hang with some of the people attending prior to the event tomorrow. After that, I did not see her the rest of the night, and I did not mind since she was hosting the special event that night with the rest of her group. During my time there, the famous YouTuber guy approached me, and I remember him having this very strange look on his face, like he was weary of something. At the moment, not knowing anything, I had no reason to suspect anything, and asked him to take a look at something I needed help with at the time, and from there, things were smooth between him and me the rest of the night. I spent some time with some mutual friends, and all even went to a sub shop that was not too far away from the event location. Later that night, me and the friend staying over my apartment went back home and got ready for the event the following day. The next day, when I was at the event, I managed to find my GF while I was in search for someone else. And when greeting me, she addressed me by my YouTube handle, which I found kind of odd coming from her. But it was what I rather have been called than by my actual name while I was out there at these events, since I like to keep my personal life from the whole YouTube thing. I ended up not seeing her the entire event, but I did run into the famous YouTuber guy a couple of times. By the end of the event, I was having a pretty shit day, so I left home. I did not stay in the campgrounds since I would rather go back to my own bed instead of sleeping on the floor out in the cold. My GF stayed the night again, and since she was with her group of people hosting that part of the event, I figured she would be busy. I did not attend the second day of the event and stayed home. The mutual friend who was visiting had taken all of his stuff, so I was just mostly focused on seeing the content I could make with what I recorded at this event. My GF went back to her dorm at her university and then drove home to visit her family for a week. During this time, I did not hear much from her, and her Instagram stories did seem a little weird. Almost sad is how I interpreted them. I even called her once, and she picked up and hung up the phone without saying anything, which again was strange, since she loved talking on the phone and would call me for hours many times during our relationship. Not too long prior to the event, I do remember her saying she needed some space and time on her own, so I tried not to bother her and gave her the space she claimed she needed. After about a week or so, maybe even 10 days, she called me and told me we needed to talk. Now, with the way things were going in our relationship, I did not take this as the breakup talk she meant for it to be over the phone. She waited to break up with me in person and did the whole emotional crying thing as if I was the one hurting her. I was just left completely confused because I did not see this coming at all. I know that the way I worded this makes it seem like it was so obvious, but this is me writing this in hindsight, where it appears to be super apparent that things were heading this way. But from my perspective at the time, I thought things were going great. We had communicated through our problems, and nothing seriously wrong seemed to be happening in our relationship. So when she broke up with me, I was shocked. In my previous relationships, the mood of the relationship soured prior to any breakup, but in this case, things always seemed to be going well for us. We probably had less than 5 arguments during the entire ordeal, and after each of these occurrences, either I apologized or she apologized if we behaved inappropriately with one another. My whole family was shocked, as not a month prior we had had several celebrations, such as my sister Quinceañeras, and Christmas and even New Year's with her family. I think her family was shocked too because of those same reasons. I heard later that during the week she was gone, she had quietly told them that she and I had already talked about things and that we agreed to break up, which was obviously not true at all. I was left confused and shocked. I asked many questions as to why she wanted to end the relationship, and she said something along the lines of, "I am doing badly in school. I need to finish my degrees as you have yours, and I don't have time for a boyfriend right now because of that." She also said that her and I would get back together, that we just needed a break from each other. She had never betrayed my trust before and seemed to have always been loyal to me up until then, so I had no reason to not believe her. I did suspect there was someone else and that was the reason for the break. Among those questions I asked her was if she had cheated on me. Obviously, she said no, which I wholeheartedly believed. I mean, who would cheat on their partner after having been cheated on themselves by someone else? I mean, she knew what it felt like. She described it prior when we were just friends. She set it of her up, and that it was clearly painful for her. She said she was very depressed, and she even went to a psychologist to talk about her issues, which I guess led to her ending up taking medication for her supposed depression. Anyway, to try and abridge this a bit, turns out the Thursday that she made that Instagram story, the one with, yay, that's because that night she drove 2 hours to the event site where the famous YouTube guy was staying in the RV of the guy who was helping him get into the event. That night, in my ex-GFS own words, she gave him head in her car, which is, of course, the only thing she admitted to, but was probably not the only thing that happened that night. Then obviously I show up to the event next day, and both her and the YouTuber are both acting suspicious as F. Who knows what happened that day, but from what it seems, she might have slept in her tent that night based on how her tent was when I got there during the day of the event. The day of the event, I go home early. What does she do? She sleeps in the RV with the YouTuber. How do I know? Initially, a mutual friend let it slip by that him and a couple of people, including her, all slept in one bed together. Which again, strange and borderline weird as F to be sleeping with your bros like that, but that's just me. But then the truth came out. Someone who knew me through that bit of micro fame I had went ahead and let me know that his dad walked into the RV to speak with the owner when he saw only the YouTuber guy and my ex dead asleep in the bed of the RV. The day she let me know she sucked him off in her car, I remember she said she felt such a weight off her shoulders. Said she felt super guilty every time she lied to me about it. She expected me to go into a violent rage, as she had seen her previous partner do when she did things that guy felt such a reaction was warranted. Unfortunately, I reacted poorly, and by that I mean very weakly. I had that whole day planned for us since I obviously had believed her when she said she hadn't cheated on me when I previously asked her. I had it in my mind that the day she came over to talk to me, it was going to be a pleasant day for us to rekindle our relationship. If I had had more time to process the new information, I don't think I would have had those plans and would have instead been more on the offensive. It seems to me she liked having these conversations in person because she knew I would never hurt her like her ex prior to me did. So instead of telling me things over the phone so I could have time to think what to do next, she played the emotional victim in person so that I would feel sorry for her, and it was hard not to. It's difficult to see the person you love tell you that they willingly went behind your back and betrayed you, and right then and there realize that the person you once knew is dead. But not only that, skip the entire grieving moment one needs as a human and continue to then be objective in thought in order to make sure your next move is the correct one, a move which will not make you appear weak as a man. I could have known about the incident the week after it happened. The night before she slept with the guy in the RV, the Saturday of the event, she got into a car with one of our friends and let him know that she had sucked the YouTuber guy off on Thursday and that she was planning on breaking up with me. But also mentioned that her intention was not to break up with me permanently, but only for some time. The freaking audacity on her. Crazy to me that I had to wait months for this information. None of the people in the supposed friend group, even though they knew, had the balls to tell me. This is what I mean by disrespect. It felt like they all took her side and kept her secret from me. You don't do that to your friends, the people who you spend time together with, the people you share your home with. Wild stuff. Now, had I not been so scrawny and weak back then, I probably would have found a way to get physically involved with the YouTuber guy. Though now that I am much bigger and muscular, something like that may not be completely out of the cards yet. But that's just probably my anger talking as I write this story. I handled the situation horribly, and not because I did anything that was violent or anything. It's because I made myself look weak. I basically let her run all over me and destroy me emotionally. The fact that I did not know everything as it happened, and I was so nice as she continued to lie to my face, and I continued to believe her because I thought she was different from the other women I had had previously. When I confronted the YouTuber guy via Instagram, my ex seemed to get furious as it is something she asked me not to do. But I mean, seriously, she is going to make demands after she just betrayed my trust completely. I had no loyalty to her, and from then, any information I got that I could potentially use against her, I did. Unfortunately, there was not much I could do with it though. I'm guessing the guy wanted no issues to arise from the little situationship both of them had, and asked her to keep it on the down low. So my ex, I guess in hopes of something in the future with this guy, asked that I would remain quiet. Out of all the guys within the community and those outside of it who hit on her in hopes that he would take the bait, the only one she seemed to do so for was the wealthier and more famous guy than me. It wasn't some Joe Smo no one knew about. It was the guy everyone knew. The famous guy. If there was ever a more blatant example of hypergamy, women are wild. After I confronted the guy, and he immediately contacted her asking why she spilled the beans, it sent her into a fit of rage, and she blamed me for the cheating. Luckily for me, I made her take that one back very quickly. She also tried to switch the blame to the famous guy for making her cheat, but I once again did not let her do this and focused the blame on her. She was the gatekeeper of sex, just as she told him in the beginning that she had a boyfriend and she would not fly out to F. She also told him, "I'll be right over," and made that 2-hour drive to do just that. I did want to just destroy her reputation within the online community we were both part of, but because of the respect I had for her parents and also the huge shame I had because of what had happened, I deleted my online persona and discarded all of these people from the friend group. I even quit the hobby and started working insane hours at work, 80, 90 plus hours, to keep myself busy. Many people say you go out and of someone else in order to get over your failed relationship. Did this not long after the breakup, and it's just not the same. I guess I knew it would be the case, but I had to try, for the sake of getting rid of the pain and the shame. During my time at work, I could not stop thinking and talking about the hobby, so once I stopped working so much, I did get back into it. That was about a year or so later. I did start making content again, and also made new friends. But I would say all of these new friendships are very surface level. In other words, I am only friends with these people when I am participating in the hobby. I don't have much contact with them outside of it. I have not attended any events and only done my hobby at one location local to where I reside. People from the past who have recognized me from my previous channel and pointed it out to me, so I guess I can't escape my previous online persona completely, even if I hide my face as I have tried to while I am out there recording content. This new channel now has almost 5 times more subscribers, and I think about 40 times the amount of views that my previous channel had by the time I deleted it, though my relationship with my viewers is non-existent. I do still enjoy my hobby and plan to attend events eventually. I can't let this shitty experience take that from me, even though it still hurts, and my trust for people, especially for women, has gone through the floor. Moving forward, as part of the lesson I feel I learned from this experience, I have discarded all my friendships with women and have limited who I consider a real friend. Finally managed to get this story out after almost 2 years of writing it and deciding if I should even send it. Looking forward to hearing your thoughts, as well as those in the comments.
That's what she gets. The grass was not greener on the other side. It never is. It never is. Listen, man, when they want to walk out of your life, let them. When someone doesn't want anything to do with you anymore abruptly, yeah, it does hurt. I've been there before. It does hurt when someone just disappears. Hey, I need to go to church and pray. I'm going through some things. And they just disappear. It hurts. And you find out that they were doing some bull crap. You know what I mean? And that was a personal experience I just threw at you guys. That's why I said that. I've been through that before, man, and I appreciate your story. I appreciate you sharing your journey, everything. And I started thinking that relationships were just transactional. Dude, I went through the same stuff. I felt the same way. I was done. No. You guys remember when I used to say all the time, no marriage, no relationships? Who's been here from the beginning? I stopped saying that because people would email me or even write in the comments and say, yeah, I'm with you. No marriage, no relationships. And I didn't want people to feel that way if they've never even experienced a relationship, or they were just saying it because, you know what? Yeah, I'm going with it too. You know, I'm not against relationships or people being in relationships. I feel this way because of what I've gone through. And I feel like I've gone through enough to where I'm like, I'm done. I don't want nothing to do with it. I still hang out, have a good time, but serious relationships, no. Mm-mm. Mm-mm. But I'm not trying to convince anybody else to be that way. You know what I mean? I'm not trying to push that on anybody. Live your own life. Do what's best for you. There are married men that listen to this channel. They've written me before. But dude, I appreciate your story, man. I really do. I love it, man. Thanks for sending in this story. Guys, if you want to send in a story, send it to truestorynation@gmail.com. Here, I'll put it on the screen. That's truestorynation@gmail.com. I'll catch you guys at the next one.